Hey folks, I'm Jeff Hirsch, and in today's short video, I want to show you how you can install an older version of Photoshop right alongside the current one you're running. While the latest release, version 27.1, is chock full of amazing improvements and new features, there are actually a number of reasons you might want to have access to an older version. Reason number one, you have an older computer or are running an older operating system, and the newer releases either aren't compatible or don't run well on your hardware. Installing an older version may give you better performance on older hardware, or at the very least allow you to install and run the program in the first place. This is great for keeping those old Mac and Windows machines in service as long as possible. While most Mac Photoshop plugins have been updated to support the newer M-series chips made by Apple, there are still quite a few that are only compatible with Intel CPUs. Mac users who rely on older Intel-based plugins can take advantage of the older Intel-compatible versions of Photoshop to keep those plugins working under Rosetta on an Apple Silicon-based Mac. Reason number two, you have Photoshop actions you rely on that were broken by recent updates. Photoshop actions rely on menus and panels being named and arranged in a very specific way, and with the latest version of Photoshop, Adobe has actually combined some of the adjustment layers, renamed them, and even changed how certain plugins behave when called from an action. These changes had the effect of breaking several of my favorite creative Photoshop actions, things like the abstract ink scattering action, for example. Installing an older version of Photoshop has allowed me to run those actions again without getting any errors or having it fail entirely. Everything in the older version is still in the right place and still named the right way, so your actions should behave as expected. Reason number three, you rely on Pantone color books for spot colors in your design work. Up until November of 2022, Adobe provided users with a complete set of Pantone color books for use with Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. These are the industry standard swatch books for spot color matching, and Adobe included these color books by default as part of their trio of design applications. In late 2021, Pantone changed their business model, and their licensing agreement with Adobe was eventually terminated in late 2022 when Adobe chose not to pay the fee for their users anymore. From that point forward, any designer who wanted to access spot colors that they may have used in a previously saved document would now be required to pay Pantone $15 a month for access to those spot colors via a new Pantone Connect subscription service that was set up to replace the built-in color system. If you don't pay for the new color books, your spot colors show up as gray when you try to open them in the new versions of Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. As you might imagine, this has caused considerable stress for designers who had come to depend on the fact that those color books were always built into Photoshop. Well, installing an older version of Photoshop can restore those missing swatch books to your design arsenal, allowing you to open your older design again and not have your spot colors replaced with gray. One other note, I don't know what the legal issues are in using those older swatch books with a newer version of Photoshop, but I can tell you that they are entirely compatible and can be copied into the Color Books preset folder in any newer version of the program they might be missing from. Reason number four, you don't need or want generative AI features, or they don't run well on your computer. The newer generative AI features that were added to Photoshop aren't everybody's cup of tea, nor do they run particularly well on older computers. Installing an older version of Photoshop gives you all of the previous program functions, but without the addition of generative fill, generative expand, etc. You will still have the older patching technology like the healing brush and content-aware fill, you just won't have the newer AI-driven ones. And for some folks, that's reason enough to keep the older Photoshop around. Those are just 4 reasons I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there are plenty of others, but whatever your reason is, the process for installing an older release of Photoshop is really easy once you know where to look. As of the recording of this video, the oldest version of Photoshop that Adobe will offer you for installation via the Creative Cloud desktop app is Photoshop version 22.2.0, also known as Photoshop 2021. Coincidentally, this just happens to be the last major release of Photoshop that still included those Pantone color books. And I have confirmed that this older version is available for Windows 10, Windows 11, and both Intel and Apple Silicon Macs running a variety of Mac operating systems. So regardless of which operating system or CPU you are using, you should have access to version 22.2 along with all the newer minor and major releases ranging from 26.0 all the way up to the newest 27.1. Okay, with all that explanation out of the way, let me show you how to get that older version installed. Open up the Creative Cloud desktop app on your computer. This is that little application that manages your Adobe subscription and handles the installation, uninstallation, and upgrading of your various programs like Photoshop and Lightroom and Acrobat. Once it's open, click on the Apps icon in the little toolbar on the left side of the window. This will show all of the apps that you have in your subscription plan and which ones you have installed. Find the Photoshop icon and look for a small 3 dots menu at the bottom of that section that displays More Actions when you hover over it with your cursor. Click on that More Actions menu and choose Other Versions from the pop-up menu that appears. This will bring up a list of all of the different Photoshop versions that are available for you to install on your computer. You'll notice that most of them are newer releases, starting with version 27.1 and working backwards all the way down to 26.0. But if you look at the very bottom of that list, you'll find version 22.2.0, a much older release and the one that we're looking for. In my case, you can see that this older version has already been installed on my computer, so it's only offering me the option to uninstall instead. Yours, of course, will say install if you don't yet have it. And that's literally the entire trick. Once you find that Other Versions option in the Photoshop section of the Creative Cloud desktop app, you'll be able to install that older 2021 release of Photoshop right alongside the latest version. And this gives you the best of both worlds. With version 27, you get all the latest features, and with version 22, you get compatibility with older software and hardware. There's one last tip I want to show you. Lightroom now has the option to let you choose which version of Photoshop will be used to open your photos when you send them out for editing. Previously, the program would only work automatically with a single version of Photoshop, but recent updates allow you to actually switch between them as needed. You'll find that option in the External Editing Preferences. Set the Photoshop version to whichever one you wish to use, and the next time you send out an image for external editing, it will open that version of Photoshop. I normally leave mine set for the newest version, since that's what I'm working on most of the time, but I can easily switch it over to the older Photoshop anytime I need to use that one. For more Lightroom and Photoshop videos, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and go ahead and click the bell icon to get notified anytime I post a new video. And if you aren't already on my mailing list, head over to jeffhirsch.com and sign up for the mailing list, and you'll get updates on my classes and workshops and trips, along with bonus tutorial videos and articles for Photoshop and Lightroom. I promise not to spam your inbox, and I will never ever sell your address to a third party. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.